Our next speaker today is Alison Wimmer. She's a neurodevelopmental consultant with 24 years of experience. Again, all these people with all this wonderful experience working with children with brain injuries, autism, as well as Down syndrome. Alison spoke for us last year as well, and we're really grateful to have her back this year and excited to hear what she has to share with us today. So welcome, Alison Wimmer. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'd like to do a little bit of an inventory, if I can, of just who is out there in the audience. It helps me to kind of know how to direct my speech and make sure that I'm addressing what's important to all of you. Would you raise your hand if you have a little one under the age of 5 with Down syndrome? Thank you. Is anyone here from out of the U.S.? Wonderful. Anyone who has a child over the age of 5, between 5 and 15 years old? Great. Also with Down syndrome, keep your hands up, please. Perfect. Anybody with mobility issues? Okay. Issues with eyes? Great. Any issues with speech and language? Wonderful. Thank you. Today I'm going to go through a bunch of different slides. I have quite a lot to talk about, so if I go too quickly, please raise your hand. I'll back up the slide and we'll talk about anything that you have questions on. I will also be at the Down syndrome options table, which is just down the hallway as you exit this room here. So I know that children with autism, when they're born or before they're born, you find out that they have Down syndrome. It could be very concerning to the parent. I also know that the National Institutes of Health puts out a lot of paperwork and studies and things that tell you that your child is really destined to a kind of meek future unless you follow a lot of intervention. I am one of those interventionalists who can take your child from where they are at the moment and really create a world of opportunity. I have kids on my caseload who are going to college, who are getting married, who hold jobs. I have one who was just assigned position of manager at a nursery in his local town. Children with Down syndrome can do anything. You just really have to set your sights high. So I say if you're told they can't, don't listen. A neurodevelopmental evaluation covers really all aspects of the child. We work to look beyond the symptoms and really address the cause. What is the reason behind what's happening? We don't tell you what's wrong. We tell you how to make it better, how to make it right. We look at the future. What do you want for your child? Do you expect that they'll be living with you forever, or do you want them to go to college and have a relationship and a family outside of yourself? We change the dynamic. We help you to tell your family, to tell your friends, to help you to help everyone to understand that your child can do the things that you want them to do. Your child's learning challenges can and will be overcome with lots of work from both of you. This is from the National Institutes of Health. It is basically what they think is up with your child when it comes to speech. To be honest, I haven't read it from start to finish. Strange, but I haven't, because I know what can be done when it comes to your child with speech issues. I also know that hearing can be fixed. You know, there's issues with your child's tubes. There's issues with child's diet that affects those tubes. There's all kinds of things that can be done. So I didn't read this one to myself, and I'm not going to read it to you either. When you work with developmental and behavioral consultants, I give you a list of things that you can do to work on speech issues, to work on hearing issues. I don't tell you what's broken. I tell you how to fix it. Your child is a child. They might have Down syndrome, but they are not Down syndrome. They're going to act like those children and people that they're around. You know, if you expect that they can't climb on the monkey bars or go down the slide, they're not going to climb on the monkey bars and go down the slide. Your perception will direct their future. If they go over to grandma's and grandma says, well, he's so cute, you know, he doesn't have to get off the couch and get his juice, I'll just bring it to him. Well, then their child's not going to get off the couch and go get his juice because grandma's going to bring it to him. Don't place limits on your children, especially children with Down syndrome. There's often a logical solution. Looking at the symptom versus looking at the problem. That's the answer. So in order to address language, with language there's a lot of things, you know, the way you breathe and how much lung capacity you have. I was visiting with a mom just before coming in here, and she said that he didn't have the ability to, you know, give great speech. He couldn't really breathe. He couldn't have enough breath to make a full sentence. Well, I think of Christopher Reeves, you know, the Superman who was in the wheelchair, and he was speaking in 1 and 2 words because that's all the breath that he had. You know, if you're not working on breath, the child is not going to be able to speak in utterances of more than 2 or 3 words. Articulation is really, really, really important. It's great for us to understand our child, but if we can actually have others understand him too without having to have a translator, it's very, very great. Looking at articulation, the most important piece that I see that is often not focused on is chewing. Chewing is the best way to help articulation. How the child moves that food, if they know where their tongue is in their mouth, being able to move that tongue as a muscle throughout the mouth, chewing, 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 and moving that food from the molars. So feeding your child a diet of puree is not going to get them to speak well. Auditory tonal processing. How do they perceive the sound in their environment? You know, there are some situations where the child just really can't hear what's being said. It kind of sounds like that Charlie Brown that we all heard, I think, in our generation here that's in the room. So you want to look at tonal processing. Does that mean that you're going to take the child to the doctor, put them in a hearing booth, and have the 8 tones that they test? When there's 30,000 tones in speech? Those 8 tones aren't going to tell you, can your child really process the tones in speech? You as a parent or the specialist need to look and say, he can hear me when this is going on, he can't hear me when this is going on. Auditory sequential processing is a huge piece. How much information can they take in and process at one time? If you're in an environment and, you know, like I think of the subway in New York, okay, you're downstairs in the subway, train's going by, mom's talking, saying, you know, come with daddy, get your backpack, blah, 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 and there's people passing and tons of information the child can't process. Most of your kids are in that subway all the time. Input. If you talk in baby talk, the child will talk in baby talk. Rote language versus random language. If you are saying, can I have juice? And that's the only thing that Johnny knows to say when he wants juice. And you're teaching rote language and repeating the same phrases over and over versus giving them random things, having them process random information. You know, it makes for a more complete child. If you want them to function well with you, that's one thing. But if you want them to function well in the community, that's another. And that's always, in my mind, the goal. You need to give your children time to process. If you ask them, so, Johnny, what do you want for lunch? And Johnny's thinking, well, I don't know, I kind of feel like a peanut butter sandwich, but I had that last week, and my brother had a ham and cheese, and why can't I have a ham and cheese? And they still haven't answered you. And you say, well, Johnny, what do you want for lunch? As if he didn't hear you. He has to start that process all over again. I'm going to be showing you some clips during the rest of my presentation that will show you exactly that. My clients have been really, really, really good about providing me with video documentation of their children and their process. This is the first one, and I'm hoping I can get this one to start. I might need a little bit of help here on this video. I'm used to using a mouse. Do I just try that?
What?
Yes.
Cheese again? You're asking for cheese again?
Do we have volume on this? Sure. So this is Greta.
Meat? Nut? Anything? Any other requests?
Mom's waiting. She's still waiting. Most of us would have given up by now. Cookie. Cookie. Did Greta get her cookie? Greta got her cookie. So waiting and listening and processing. Her older brother did help and whispered cookie to her. But just like thinking about, okay, are you hurrying them? Are you helping them by hurrying them? Are you helping them by telling them what you want? Are you helping them by rephrasing it? What is the real world like? You know, do we always want to try to accommodate our children with their speech, or do we want to help them to function out there? This is Corey. And Corey, this is before I met him. You can see a lot of reverse swallow, the tongue coming out, the hands in the mouth. Grabbing his food with his hand off of his tray. Okay, I got to work with him soon after that, and this is how we changed things, which really helped his speech. This is Corey now. Dad's handing him the spoon. Puts a spoon in his mouth. He's pretty proud of himself. I was too. There's still a little bit of reverse swallow there, but we are working to eradicate that. You can see that tongue coming out. All right. So when I'm looking at feeding and feeding issues, I'm looking at everything. How are the eyes working? How are they meeting and making contact with the food that he's eating? How is his hand working? How is his hand-eye coordination? How is his tongue? How is his swallow? How long does that food stay in him? What does it look like when it comes out? I know that's gross, but it's real. Social development. What is your child's global function? By that I mean, are they 10 and they act like a 3-year-old? Are they 15 and they act like an 8-year-old? Are they 18 and they act like a 12-year-old? Or, where are they globally? Like all around. How do they function in an environment? What do they play with? What videos do they watch? Who do they interact with? Can they order their own food at a restaurant as a teenager? How do they think? That's huge. Are they recalling Dora videos in their mind as they're out trying to socialize, playing video games with their friends? Or are they where they should be, where we hope they are? One-on-one interaction. If they're sitting with a friend, are they playing with their friends or playing? I mean, they may not always be up to age, but are they functioning outside of Dora? Are they functioning outside of video games? Can they function in the environment that they're in? Look at the stages of play, the stages of development. And once they're in a stage, move them beyond that stage. Looking at academics, school. My husband is here with me. He was a special ed teacher. It was really hard trying to get him to help get the knowledge out to the parents. I mean, there's a lot of politics going on. I get that. I've seen it hands-on. I've never been a special ed teacher, but Matt was. I saw how some teachers wanted the kids in the classroom and some teachers really didn't. Look at your child, their academics. Look at their ability to be social. Are they able to say, I don't feel well, I have a stomach ache, I left my book at home, I need a jacket? Can they communicate to other people? Are they just going to get by? Is an OT going to come in and accommodate and say, well, let's just do this with Jimmy because he really can't play ball with the other kids? Or is it going to be, let's get somebody in here to help Jimmy play with those other kids? Look for an appropriate social environment. Yes, kids with Down syndrome are cute. They're also smart and very capable. Maybe look at special ed, going into regular ed, doing a little bit of work at home. Do a combination of all three if you need to. Really, you're the boss. You look at the school, you sit in the IEP, you sign all of those numerous pages. I have kids in British Columbia, Canada, and they had a 93-page IEP. Give me a break. Look at what is best for your child and fight for it. There's a ton of advocates out there like myself who will sit in on that IEP and be that little liaison between the scary parents and their possible lawyer and the teachers who you really need to keep your child in their good graces. You don't want to be against them. They're just going to roll their eyes, do what they have to do, and move on. That experience needs to be a good experience for your child. Look at a combination. I believe in one-on-one interaction. If you need to teach something to your child, work with them one-on-one. It's kind of like cramming before the big exam or talking to your child before they go in for their driver's ed or their first date or whatever. Have that one-on-one interaction and really work with them one-on-one. Get feedback from them. Do you get what I'm saying? Am I talking too fast? Did you understand that? Should we go back? What's going on? Show me what you know. Show me what you don't know. Okay? Get that feedback. Don't spend time on things your child knows. I hate the mad minute in math class. You sit there and you have a minute, which is stressful enough. I'm sorry, but I hate it. And 100 math problems. And you need to do as many as you can. Well, if you don't know the answers and you're just putting the wrong answers and you really don't know what you're doing, the child is just inputting that wrong information into their brain with high intensity 100 times. It's not a good thing. Look at what they know, teach them from that point, and don't spend time reviewing, doing 4 hours of homework on things that they already know. They're already delayed. Move on. For academics, use short spurts of information with really, really high intensity. I personally have done cartwheels, lots of high fives, throwing marshmallows in the air and having them catch them in their mouth. Whatever I have to do to get them to have great attention. You want high intensity and short spurts. So what do I mean by that? You can get a whole lot more math done if you do it 4 times a day for 3 minutes than if you do it for 4 hours a day. So this is Corey before I met him. Cute little guy. He was 8 months old in this video. Big, big blue eyes. Mom's a first-time mom. Specialist told him to sit. He's 8 months old. He should be sitting by now. So they made him sit. You know what I see? I see a child whose eyes aren't focused, his vestibular system is all screwy. He's leaning over, bad breath support, sucking on his fingers. Parents are screaming yahooey wooey. And I don't see anything good about this. So Mom called me and she said, I'd really like you to come in. And I said, well, tell me a little bit about your son. And she said, well, he's great. He can sit. He eats really well. We feed him. He eats a really good diet. And the PT is getting him to walk. You know, he can sit, so now he's going to walk. And I'm like, hold on a second. And I thought in my head, oh, I'm going to lose this one. She's not going to call me back. But we talked, and I told her to trust me. And guess what? She did. So this is how Corey got around when I first met him. Roll in, roll in, roll in. Up, woohoo, there's that sit again. Roll in, roll in, roll in. He was a great roller. And he was going for that remote control that you guys saw there. And really, if I had let him be, he would have gone from there to walking. So we started right away, basically one step at a time. I didn't, but the mom fired the OT. And we started Corey on a creeping program. And within a couple of weeks, his mom was prouder than he was. Then Corey decided he was in charge again. So he would go on his belly, he'd V-sit, and he'd sit up. Mom sends me these videos to my phone. I get a week, every few days, I get something. So I intervene, and we get him to do things properly. Now realize at this point, I've probably been with him 3 or 4 months, and yes, things are going slowly, but we're doing them right. And my point with all of this and showing you guys these things is that if you do things right and you have that good foundation, it may be with speech, with eyes, with academics, with anything. If you do it right and they have a good foundation, things will be great for their future. So we needed to work more on his vestibular system, which we did, and then I started him standing. And I had him just playing with things at basic waist high, hip high. You know, he's not thinking, oh my goodness, I'm standing, whoa, I'm going to fall over. He's thinking, wow, let me push this button and see what happens. Kids at this level can only really process one thing. So I'm driving down the highway. I live in Utah. On May 13th, they passed a law, no cell phones while you're driving. So my disclaimer, this is before May 13th. Mom sends me this video. I did pull over to watch it. His first steps. Very, very much delayed from what the PT would have wanted. But if you guys could see him now, pretty amazing. This is a little guy that I knew when he was 3. His name is Matt. He lives in Florida. He has 4 older brothers, all who have seen me at one time or another. I saw him in an office setting for, I want to say, 6 years. When I resigned from my company because of my specialty and the threat I had to my ex-boss, I was asked to sign a non-compete agreement, which was international and for 2 years. I could not practice in my field at all. So I took a little bit of time off, and Mom called me last December and told me, I really want you back in Matt's life. This is where he's at. So I went ahead and went down to Florida after this conversation. I was there in January, and I was absolutely shocked at the difference in going into Matt's home and the things that I was able to pick up on almost immediately. In the hour and a half I was allotted to see him previous to this visit, I could only really address the things that presented themselves or the things from Mom's point of view, but I really couldn't see him from morning till night and realized that this was a little guy that I had missed so much on. So, in looking at him overall, he was a great little 13-year-old boy, played soccer, had a tennis court in his backyard, was a great tennis player, but he still talked like he was 3 or 4 years old. He used a lot of rote sentences. He really couldn't read. He was silly, really silly. And that's kind of what his MO was. Like, he was just silly, and he functioned, and he played a couple sports, and he had kind of a bad attitude when he didn't win, and he acted like he was 4. So I started checking on things. This is not when I checked on it. This is a good couple weeks after, but he couldn't even do a cross creep or cross crawl, cross march, cross skip. His central nervous system was really, really weak. It was concerning to me because I knew that in order for him to function well, he needed this foundation like I talked about before. And his foundation was really not good. So he's got knee pads on here and socks, which you'll see change tomorrow. I think the next video is. But he's sliding on the wood floor, but his cross creep at this point is pretty bad. He doesn't have the proper cross creep, which is left arm up, right knee up, and opposite, okay? Which tells me a whole lot about his brain and how his brain works. This is him doing what he thinks is a good cross march. You'll notice that his arms are low and his knees don't go high, and he's just kind of going through the motions. Without that deliberate cross crawl and the energy, I was able to pick up on the fact that his blood oxygen levels were really depleted. I put him immediately on some chlorophyll, and we did a lot of breath work and work on his lungs to get him to be able to actually have the physical ability to be strong in these things. I mean, he could play tennis like a pro. Amazing. But he was totally out of breath. I was so shocked at how well he did with that. This is him skipping. Watch when he gets around this couch. You'll see he's kind of out of breath. I wish I hadn't taken the volume out of that. But you see him kind of drop? He wasn't pretending. He literally was out of breath, and he had only gone 15 feet. So we started working. He's working actually with a specialist in Florida. She's a reading specialist. She's out of Jacksonville. She's excellent. Her name is Dana, and she is working with him on visual therapy as well as phonics therapy, and then getting him into fast forward. So in doing his program, which again I just wrote it in January, I wanted to give her something that would be of value across the board. You know, when I first go into, remember I had a relationship with Jean, but when I first go into a family, I like to give them something like some meat and potatoes that they can do, that they can become part of my team and say, you know what, she knows what she's talking about. Let's do what she says from this point forward. Let's talk to her. Let's put her on our team. Let's do this. So I looked at this situation with Matt as, you know, Mom was already on board. She called me in. But what am I going to be able to do in the short amount of time that they actually have left in the day to dedicate to me? This little guy is homeschooled, but he's very busy with this other therapist, and she does have these other kids at home. So this is what we did. We just started him on doing a proper cross crawl. And, you know, like he had to work in position. Mom did a lot of hand over hand with him, and he did a lot of laps around his house. Now, I'm not like the institutes that in Philadelphia. I don't have your child creep and crawl 2 miles and do a track and all of this. I look at the child as an individual. Remember, a child is a child. Just because they have Down syndrome doesn't mean that you do the same thing with all of them. You have to look at what they specifically need and where they are specifically at. And this little guy doesn't have Down syndrome, but I had a lot of really good video to show you guys, so my apologies here. So here he is just creeping, going around his counter, and you can see that he's getting more deliberate. His march is getting better. His arms are going up higher. Not a great video. Sorry about that. He was still quite a bit out of breath. So rather than have him covering a lot of ground, I had him do the cross skip in front of a mirror. I wanted him to focus on the cross skip and not on his breath. Let's focus on one thing, make it good, and then we'll add the other pieces, step by step. I asked Dad for some video. He went to his office and went ahead and took this. This is just, I think, a couple weeks ago. It hasn't been 3 months. I'm actually due to see him on the 1st of June again. But he got a lot better. A lot better. Are you guys able to see the difference in that crawl? Yes? Good. So what I'm going to do when I go down there in June is I'm going to talk to him while he's doing this and see, is he able to actually do it while not thinking about it? Okay, so I'll probably give him some math facts or ask him about sports or something like that to make sure that he's not really having to think, kind of like when I'm driving, when you're 16 and you're in the car for the first time, you're like, okay, foot on the brake, put my blinker on, look through my mirrors. Now we just drive and we know what we're doing. Okay, we don't have to think about all those pieces. My experience with kiddos in Matt's situation is he probably is thinking about all the pieces. So my next step is to teach him to do it without thinking about doing it. Here's his march. Pretty deliberate. I was actually really, really proud of him for that. Arms high, strong. His breath is getting better. His oxygenation actually went from 88 to 98. 88 is at-home oxygen by medical standards. He never, ever, ever was over 92. This is an email I thought I would share with you guys with Mom's permission to Dana, that's speech, vision, and phonics therapist up in Jacksonville. And she talks about how, just everything has gotten better and realize that we're talking January 2014 to now. He's starting the Fast Forward program. Are you guys familiar with Fast Forward? Yeah. So he's rocking it. She said that he is one of the best students she's ever had, and she's been doing this since Fast Forward started. I met with another family here in Wisconsin 3 months ago, and they were really excited because Greta, the one who you saw earlier, was walking. And, they really weren't sure that she would ever walk and walk well. So again, before I took them on, I had them send me video. And here's Greta. If you guys can see, her right leg is really straight. And she's kind of walking like this. If I let that be, that's how Greta would have walked the rest of her life. So I put some things into her program, and I thought I would show you kind of how simple those things are. Because it's not like, we have to do this 8 to 13 hours a day. This activity here is only for 2 minutes. I was glad to get this video for multiple reasons. One, because they let Greta do it herself, which was an absolute no-no. You'll see why right here. Her feet are strapped to that board properly so that she can build her quadriceps properly. If you're walking like this or you're walking like this and you do sit stands like this, your feet placement, you're going to build your quadriceps wrong, which means you're only going to get better at walking like this or walking like this. All right? We're trying to build her quadriceps so her stability is not in her knees. It's in the muscles of her legs. So Dad's helping her, and if you guys look, her right leg is still locking. That's because he's sitting on that side of her body. So when I saw this video, which is how I work with my kids when I can't physically be there, I had Dad move, and now her right leg has gotten a lot more stable. She's pretty cute, huh? So in some of the video with Greta, which I didn't put on here, I was concerned about going over time. You can see, I don't know if you saw when she was eating or when she was doing the sit-stands, her eyes. Her eyes are a lot of her issue. In looking at eyes, we have issues with convergence and with depth perception. Your eyes work together. Her eyes don't work together. She has a nystagmus where her eyes go back and forth, and she has a convergent strabismus where they go in together. She has no depth perception. So things like walking downstairs and being able to pick up little things, like she's not great at doing any of those things, but that's not because she's not great at doing them, it's because her eyes are an issue. So they put her in glasses. And yeah, her eyes look great. They weren't going in anymore. They were actually sort of out where they should be. And her nystagmus wasn't as bad. But you take those glasses off, and her eyes were worse than they had ever been before. And the reason is that the muscles of the eye are not being worked. You're putting the glasses on kind of as a crutch. And the muscles in her eyes aren't being strengthened, they're actually being weakened. In some cases, glasses are necessary. In most of the cases I see, they're not. We take them off, we strengthen the eyes, we work on convergence, we do a little bit of work on the myopia where we're wearing pinhole glasses, we do some near point, far point stuff. I did pinhole glasses myself in my past, and my vision has gotten a lot better. The vestibular system, your eyes are part of your balance. If you don't have good balance in your ears, lots of ear infections, lots of fluid, a mucousy child, they rely mostly on their eyes to balance. How do I know that? Well, because I see a lot of kids, but I also don't have a balance nerve. They cut it when they did a brain surgery on me. I use my eyes to balance. If it's dark out or I close my eyes, I'm on the ground. It's hard. If you don't have your eyes or you don't have your ears, it's really hard to balance. So do you live with that or do you work to fix it? You work to fix it. There's lots of exercises you can do for eyes. You want to think about it as any kind of exercise routine. with frequency and duration. If you do a ton of eye work and you tire out that muscle, just like if you're working out in the gym and you tire out your bicep, you're really not making any headway. You need to do frequency, short duration, but really, really high frequency. So, bottom line, you're the boss. If you don't believe what they're telling you, challenge it. If you don't like what you're hearing, if you don't like the results, if you're not seeing results, challenge it. Fire them. Change direction. You're the boss of your child. And the only hope that they'll have a great future. Are there any questions? I covered a lot of territory. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. It will, because if you look at the hip, right, she probably has not, the creeping and the crawling will actually help that hip socket to develop, basically just by grinding in there. So if she has, and visual and strength, balance, all of those things. So taking her back, maybe not promoting the walking so much, but taking her back to that creep and that crawl would be great. So how do you do that? Create tunnels. Put your dining room chairs all in a line. Get underneath that. Make situations where she has to creep or crawl. Putting pillows on the ground and having other children or yourself creeping over those pillows. Putting tunnels and putting pillows inside the tunnels. Things like that. And yes, getting her to creep and to crawl. And maybe not congratulating her on walking, not making such a big deal out of that walk to try to get her to go back down. If you spend more time, yay, clapping hands when she's down on the ground, she'll be down on the ground more frequently. Yeah. So unilateral, so she's only using one leg? Yeah. We should chat afterwards, and I can help you with that. I'll probably have you get down and show me, or I'll get down and we'll take a look at that. There are things that can be done. Is she here? I'll peek at her for you. Yeah. Just talk with me afterwards. And I'd love to peek at her for you. Yeah, of course. Of course. Yes. Absolutely. Gigantic. Yes. As in Matt. Matt is now reading books. For fun. He has a little cousin who is 2, and he read with her for an hour. Mom told me yesterday. Absolutely. It's amazing. Like if you took a classroom of 6-year-olds in like a Title I or a special classroom, a reading classroom, and you looked at a developmental history on those children, I have to say that across the board, in my experience, those children have not crept or crawled. A complete central nervous system should be able, and I won't do it because I'm on high heels on a stage, okay, is to be able to cross-skip backwards while doing math facts or something else that's difficult for the child. That is how you check if it's complete. That's one of the pieces that I use. No.
Is there an age limit that you would not do that?
No. I haven't experienced an age limit at this point. I mean, there is a situation where, will they comply? Some teenagers are going to say, no, where I don't care, Right. Or having the whole family do it. Yeah. 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 Go ahead. Without the proper lower level function, you can't go right into a cross skip, in my opinion. You need to go all the way back, even if it's just for a week or two. You know, it's not something that has to be done for 2.5 miles a day, for 13 hours a day, for, you know. Right. Was there another question back here? Yes.
What's a good neurodevelopmental activity, maybe to stimulate creeping and crawling or whatever, for a 25-year-old who has Asperger's?
That depends on his personality, his tolerance, what would be his paycheck for doing that, his environment. You know, does he live at home? Are there other kids there? How does he feel about himself emotionally? What is his confidence like? What's his processing level? It's a lot of pieces. So why don't you check in with me afterwards and we can maybe look at some of those pieces? Okay. Is he here? Oh. Yes. I'm not familiar with brain balance. I'm sorry. But why don't you give me a call or check in with me on my website, and I can maybe talk with you about that. My husband's behind you. Matt, will you write that down so I can look at brain balance, please? Way to go. I studied under Bob Doman for 15 years-ish. But I also was doing what I do prior to meeting up with him ever since I was 18, really. You know, there's not a direct correlation, complete direct correlation. It's in my mind, it's more like I use reading to teach speech. And so if I have a child that can read, I can give them written things to read to help with their language. And so if I have a child who doesn't creep and crawl well, they're not going to read well, and so I'm a little bit unable to really be effective with teaching their speech. I use a lot of reading with children who have better articulation, late speakers, a lot of kids with autism that love letters and words. I use the flashcards to teach them to speak. So, so I mean, it is huge. In my mind, if your child has they're not able to do the cross patterning, you really have to go back. I mean, it has a lot to do with so much of the function. And again, you don't have to go back for, 6 years. You go back for a period of time until they get it. You test it and make sure that it's good and complete, and you move on. Absolutely. So, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Right. Yep. Right. My first child, who's now 26 years old, really did well with his walking. He started at 10 months, and I thought that was fantastic. It wasn't. It's amazing looking back how I should have applied what I know to my own children. It's a whole nother hour-long speech, I'm sure. It is really good, and like anything else, with practice, you get better at it. So typically, looking at things like sequential processing and how much information they can take in, and the development of their central nervous system, those are really key pieces to doing what I do. Now, don't get me wrong. I've been ABA trained by the best of the best, and I believe in chiropractic and biomedical intervention and all of those things. But again, child by child. ABA is applied behavior analysis. It's used very frequently in kids with autism. Was there a hand back there? Yes. I am. I actually had a cancellation yesterday. They've moved to June. Would you like to talk with me about that? I'm excited. I love to help. I'm actually here with my husband. We're going on a date. He travels and for work, so I see him a month. So we're going on a date, but I have Thursday and Friday. So if that works with your schedule, let's coordinate in between other evaluations and see if we can get together, okay? Perfect. Any other questions, concerns? Yes?
Our son's an adult, he's 22. Apply what you feel first.
Yes.
And we've done tried a lot of different things, and it seems like he does it for a while, but then
Right.
and I'm still trying to get it.
Can everybody hear her question? Because it's actually really, forgive me, but it's simple to rectify. A lot of times when kids are toe walkers, there can be a physical issue like a tight heel cord or another issue. But a lot of times it's tactility. And so we have to work on the tactility on the bottom of the foot. So we can do that. They used to have, and I actually haven't been shopping lately to see, but they had sandals with those little pointy things, the rounded pointy things. Do they still have those? Well, they're like a flip-flop. But you can, so if you find a pair of those, put him in those. It'll give him the tactile input that he needs to be able to, he'll seek that. So he'll put his heel down to walk. And there's other things that you can do too, which I can show you later. Yeah? Okay. I live in Utah, in the mountains. I have some clients that come to me there. I actually have accommodations for them, and they stay. They'll fly in. They'll stay a day or a half a day, or even longer in some cases. And I do the evaluation, and then I generally will write the program and give them the pieces that I have to give them hands-on, eye-to-eye, things that you can't teach over the phone or by video. And then I send a program via email, and we have a Skype appointment where we talk and we go over the program. And then my requirement is that I get video of anything that you're concerned about immediately upon that concern. I don't want to wait 3 months to hear from you to find out that wasn't working or you were doing it incorrectly. I can look at that video at 4 a.m. your time. It doesn't matter. And then I get back with you. So we do a lot of texting, a lot of video by email or by phone and Skype. And I talk with the therapists, the teachers, the aides, the nannies, both parents. I have a relationship because I typically visit with the entire family or team. And I believe that we all have to be on that same page, because if we're not, you cannot catch a child up if you're all going in different directions. So, that being said, I just was thinking, so I see kids from Australia to Canada to Guatemala. I travel, and I'll go and see a family again for like a day or so. Same procedure, but I'm gone about 2 weeks a month. And it's just me, right? So I'm careful who I take on, especially if I'm traveling, because some of those places takes me a day to get there, and a day back. So I just make sure that the family is on board. A lot of times I'll give them something to do before I even meet them, so that they can see that it works, and once they're on my team, then we're home free. So, any other questions? I don't want to go over. 4 minutes. Any other questions? I don't, but actually I have some in my briefcase, so I'll make sure to give them to you. Thank you all for coming, and I'm going to actually be at the Down Syndrome Options Desk just down the hallway for the next hour. I'm happy to meet with anyone that wants to meet with me. And if you guys have a kiddo here, I'd love to meet them too. Thank you very much.